And so as I was praying a few days ago, the Lord began to quicken something in my heart to share quickly today. And early hours of this morning, he gave me an illustration. Thank God. Already he knew that the praise was going to take a lot of time. Thank God for illustration, which should drive the point home. Praise the Lord. And so I'm just going to share on access code. This is our year of double portion that Daddy Gio has told us in the Redeemed Christian Church of God. This is the year of his abundance, we know. But everything God says has an access to it. Everything God says is not an automatic insight. There's a pathway. I'm taking you to the promised land. I've made your name great, but there's something you must do. There's always something that gives you access to that thing. So it is foolish and foolhardy for anybody to just receive a promise of God and fold your hands and say, well, so God has said it then, therefore it's going to be so. No. You need to ask him, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to enter? How am I supposed to get into this? Because there is always something that you must do to get in. So access code. I'm reading Genesis chapter 39 verse 9, and I will show you what the Lord put in my heart. Genesis 39 verse 9. This was the account of Joseph, you will remember. He says, there is none greater in this house than I. Joseph was speaking to Potiphar's wife. Neither hath he kept back anything from me, but you, his wife, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against multimedia? I'm going to need you to help with scriptures when the time comes, but just let somebody be there and prepared for this. This was what Joseph said. And so God put this in my heart. Now you see, let's say this represents Joseph, what I'm holding in my hand. I'm going to need you to maybe zoom in for those who are online. You can see. This represents Joseph. You know that Joseph, even in his father's house, was sort of suppressed because they hated him for his dreams. So, let's say Joseph, I dip him a little bit inside this situation in his father's house. But he always rises to the top, even in his father's house. He was favored. Made coat of many colors for him. He was greatly favored. The father loved him. So, from the father's house, they sold him into slavery. A deeper situation, a worse situation. He was well manageable in my father's house. Now in a stranger's home, in a strange land, as a slave, Potiphar's house. So you dip him further into the ground in Potiphar's house. And he still rose up to the top. He still became the Oga, so to speak, in Potiphar's house. Potiphar appointed him the head over everything and over every servant. And the Bible says he prospered. Now it's foolish to think that a slave can prosper because a slave is a property. A property cannot prosper. But Joseph prospered. But then from even that place, which was some level of freedom, they took him to prison. Destiny took him to prison. False accusation, that, like we just read. So this was even deeper in the dungeon. So he goes way deep into the prison. Guess what happens? He still rises to the top. Even in prison, they still put him in charge of the prison. Put him in charge of everybody. Put him in charge of the situation, the circumstances. He was still blessed and favored in the prison. This same thing can represent Daniel. He can represent Daniel in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. He rose to the top. He can represent Daniel in the time of Belshazzar, his son. He rose to the top. He can represent Daniel in the time of King Darius. Bottom, he rose to the top. Every time they rose to the top. These characters. So got me thinking. There must be something, an inherent property, just like there is something inherent in this that keeps it rising. Because I don't think if I were to drop a stone in this water, it will rise up. So there's something inherent in this thing that keeps it rising no matter the situation you put it inside the water. There's something inherent in Joseph that kept him rising in every situation. And if God can do it with that thing inherent, then I need to know it and then embrace it, because that means I can rise up in every situation. What is that thing? The fear of God. The common denominator, the fear of God. The fear of God is oh, God is coming, I'm afraid. No, it's a reverential honor for God. Listen to what he said. He said, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against, I thought he would say against Potiphar, against my boss, against my father. He said against God. You see, most people these days take decisions based on one of three things or all of three things, and maybe more. But one of them is it to my advantage? Does it pay me, my government? That's what they will say. So if signing that check, even though it's illegal, pays my government, if rigging the election pays my government, if carrying ballot boxes pays my government, it's to my advantage, then it's okay. So as long as it's to my advantage, people take a decision based on that. Another thing that some people may consider is nobody sees it. So as long as nobody knows, it's just me and you that are here. That's why you may find a so-called man of God who is sleeping with a worker, or sleeping with another person's wife in the church. Why? Because nobody knows. So you don't know where Pastor Emeka is coming from this morning. You assume he's coming from his house. But you don't know whether he's coming from a club, whether he's coming from one prostitute's house or another strange woman's house. Somebody say, God forbid. But because nobody knows, I take the decision. That's why you will pass through traffic light in the middle of the night. Because nobody knows. Besides, there's no traffic. There's no risk of hitting anybody. So even though it's red, and I know what red means, it's not that I'm confused that red may mean, does red mean go again? I'm not sure, but let me just go. No, you know red clearly means stop. But you look left, you look right. There's nobody there. You look forward, you look behind. And Satan tells you, there's no point. What are you delaying yourself for? Are you just a dunce? And you say, well, that's true, I'm not a dunce. And you move, but actually you're a dunce, if that's what you did. But that's the reason. Nobody sees me. But not so with Joseph. He didn't say, well, this is to my advantage. Because actually sleeping with the Potiphar's wife was to his advantage. He would more or less become Oga. It's what Potiphar's wife serves Potiphar. Now she will serve Joseph. Probably even better. Because Joseph will have her time. Oga apparently seemed to be busy. Otherwise, she won't have time to be chasing after a servant. But Oga was a busy man. So she said, well, let me help myself. Joseph would have said, that's even true. God has promised me I was rising to the top. This is it. By the time I sleep with this woman, let me get this house. We'll plot how we'll kill Potiphar, and I become her husband, and we move over. This is my good time. So if it was to his advantage to sleep with her, but he didn't take it. Nobody was going to see him or her. It was just between the two of them, but he still didn't take it. These are the things that drive our decisions. Or some of the things that drive them. But the fear of God will keep you away from it. And will keep you rising to the top no matter the situation you find yourself. No matter how much people try to suppress you, you will always come to the top if you have this element, the fear of God. Let me share a testimony with us. A few years ago, I think 2 years ago or so, our visas to US was expiring. The visa was expiring either early January of the next year. And I think this was December. And somebody had just magnanimously, favorably said, Pastor, where do you want to go on vacation this Christmas? And I said, US. We had agreed. And the person got tickets for me, my wife, and my daughter, and said, go and rest. Go and enjoy yourself. And I was rejoicing, thanking God. But that was in the midst of this COVID vaccination thingy. At that time, I didn't have any vaccination. Neither did my wife. So we thought, okay, let's go and do this. We got the tickets, and they said, no, before you will board that flight, you have to have been vaccinated, I think, fully vaccinated, not just first dose, second dose, and 2 weeks after you have taken that second dose is when you are considered fully vaccinated. We hadn't taken first dose, and it was about 2 weeks to the trip. And so we thought, okay, there is one that they say is a single dose, and it will be 2 weeks by that time. So let's go and take that one. We called and called everybody we knew, pulled all the strings. Nobody could get the single dose. They said it's not available in Nigeria at this time. So it had to be the double dose, which you will take one now, and then they said the next one is, I think, 4 weeks or 6 weeks later, which meant the second dose will be in second week of January. Thereabouts. Our visa would have expired. And at that time, to get appointment to renew the US visa, it was 2 years. Maybe you won't get it that year. They'll give you an appointment for next year to even go for the interview. So this meant if we didn't travel this one, then God knows when next. And so we went to where they do vaccination to go and find out. We got there to get vaccinated. And they said, what is the reason we said we are traveling? They said, okay. The guy called me aside and said, but you don't have full vaccination. I said, I know. What do we do? I don't know what to do. He said, well, you know what I can do for you, sir. That's what I'll do is you just take the vaccination today, this first dose. Even though the next dose is 6 weeks' time in January, I will just put in the paper, the card, that you are fully vaccinated. And you can still make your trip. Then when you come back from your trip, maybe you still come back. Then you come and take your second dose. As soon as he made that proposal, I said, no problem. I walked away from him. And I went and I told my wife. As I was walking towards my wife, in my spirit I heard, if you bow, you burn. So I told my wife, this is what this guy has said. It's 6 weeks later. That's in January. Our visas would have expired. We can't make this trip. But he's offering this option. But we can't take it. She said, I know. She started crying. She wept because she was looking forward to that vacation for us to get some well-deserved rest. And maybe see her mom, who's old, elderly, and she doesn't know when this woman will go, but at least she'll have an opportunity to see her. And all this was gone. So I came back, I told the man, I said, sorry, we're not going to take that option. He said, I said, no, but we can't. That the card will be lying that I'm fully vaccinated, and I know I'm not. I can't do it. He said, okay, no problem. Join the line. He just began to treat, since money didn't come out of it, he treated us anyhow. Join the line. Oh, if you don't want to, stay there. Take your card. And we joined the line and took that first dose. And this trip went. Eventually, I think we went to either Dubai or something, was where we now went. It wasn't our first choice. It was a painful loss, so to speak, because our visas expired without us going on that trip. The fear of God. Why didn't I do it? The fear of God. I knew it was wrong. I knew I could not. I was tempted to blank out everything and say, well, maybe we'll still take that second dose. But in my heart of hearts, and many people know the real truth in your heart of hearts. You know what you are doing is wrong, but you don't have the fear of God. I couldn't. Can I drive past traffic light at night when I'm going back from vigil sometimes? Yes. There's nobody seeing me. Last man is not there. Nobody's going to arrest me. There are no cameras to even... If it's outside the country, you'll be afraid of cameras. There are no cameras at this yet. I can. But I won't. Why? The fear of God. I know it will dishonor my father if nobody sees me. Oh, have I had temptations of that women tempt men even after marriage? I have. There was a time I traveled to South Africa for administration. In South Africa there, my hotel was next to what looked like a brothel, but, all sorts of women all over. And in the night, Satan began to suggest, their noise was whatever I was, and said, nobody's here. And I said, nobody's here, Abi. Olo Donie. But would you have known? You would not have known. My wife didn't travel with me. She would not have known. This would have been me and one South African lady. And the matter will end there. And I'll fly back home and just continue like nothing happened. But I wouldn't do it. I could, but I wouldn't because of the fear of God. Have I had temptations of cash? Yes. I remember when we started Jesus Embassy, when we didn't have much money. One day somebody came, one of our members then was a very rough young man. Whether I was born again, I wasn't sure, but I was coming to church and I was praying for him. He just came one day and said, well, he wants to sow a seed. I said, service don't end. People are gone. I was just hanging around. He said, he just wants to drop it. I said, okay, what? I thought it was a check. He brought out cash. When I was almost $1 million cash packed, loaded like this, as if they just paid him off on something and he quickly carried the hot money to come and give me in my hand. And at that time, we were starving. My wife and I were struggling. Food for Isabel then was a struggle. Everything was a struggle. And Satan said, but there's nobody here. If you take 100K out of this and help yourself, God knows you need the money. And I said, I can't. Nobody will know. You won't know. But I fear God. There was a day last man caught I'm talking about the fear of God. Last man caught my driver when he went somewhere to do a job I sent him to do. He took one way. He said he didn't know it was one way. But they caught him anyway. And I said, is it one way? They said yes. I asked him. He said yes. He found out that it's one way after he had entered. So as the last man, what do we do? He said, well, Oga, if you go this place, he's going to pay 40,000 naira fine. But, just find us something because we see that you are a gentleman and it's okay. I said, find you something like how? He said, well, otherwise, if they go this, I said, I'm sorry, I'm a child of God. I'm a pastor. I can't do that. He said, well, okay, no problem. No problem. So you go pay the 40,000. I said, no problem. Give the driver the phone. He gave the driver the phone. I said, wherever they take you, go to their place. If it's 40,000, collect the ticket. God will provide. We will pay. But I'm not going to bribe. Why? I fear God. Will he save me money? Absolutely. Maybe if I give them 5K, they will let him go. So it will save me 35,000. But what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and suffers the loss of his own soul? I fear God. So I said, give my driver the phone. He gave the driver. I said, follow them. And he said, okay, give them anything. I said, no, I can't give them anything. Wherever they take you, go there, collect the ticket. God will believe God to provide. I told my wife she was in agreement. We didn't have the money for ticket, but I knew that God will provide. Let the car stay there till we pay. By the time they saw he wasn't ready to pay, eventually they released him. I said, you should go. Maybe they said, that way. Go and meet your way, Oga. They released him. Why? I fear God. Have I been tempted with alcohol? I drank alcohol before. There are some Christmases, even recently, outside the country. We got a hamper that had alcohol inside it. And good quality. I was in Atlanta. You wouldn't know. I can wait for my wife to go out for spa. She wouldn't know. And I'll put it in a glass and sip and go and lick tom-tom. I could have. I wouldn't. I fear God. I can decide to watch explicit movies. I can decide to watch porn. Nobody will know. To subscribe for data is not anything difficult. God provides abundantly. So I can watch porn when I wake up in the middle of the night to pray. I enter the prayer room. My wife is not there with me. 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. I switch on. It's porn. Or I'm watching one of those explicit movies. You won't know. She won't know. Nobody will know. It's me alone. I could. But I wouldn't. Why? I fear God. I can decide not to tithe. You would not know that I don't tithe. It's between me and God. I can decide I'm not doing it. After all, it's Old Testament. Like some of you believe foolishly. After all, it's Old Testament. Well, this is it. I'm not doing it. It doesn't matter. God knows I'm doing his work and I'm doing it very well. I can decide not to. You won't know. Nobody will know. But I can't. I fear God. Many of you insult president, insult vice president, insult this governor, insult that, whatever. Oh, is it that they don't deserve it? Sometimes they do by their actions. But I do know that the scripture says you have to honor these people. That all I owe them is to pray for them. First and foremost, that's what he said, pray for them. So there are times I feel like insulting them. I feel like calling them names because of the things they do. Particularly like the kind of things we are seeing happen lately with the election. People being ruthless just to hold on to power. People who are willing to shed blood just to hold on to power. People who don't care for human lives just because they want power. So sometimes you are tempted to open your mouth and curse them or do whatever, but I won't. Why? I fear God. It's not about them, but I fear God. All authority is of God. So I pray for them. Even early this morning, I was still praying for them. For our president, for this person. I was praying for all of them. I wouldn't. I fear God. And I'm grateful to God that through the fear of God, I've been able to access things that God has promised in his word. That people think is a lie, but I've seen it come to pass. My wife and I have seen it come to pass in our lives because of the fear of God. These are those times when nobody fears God anymore. You just take it anyhow. Do anything. If nobody will see, it doesn't matter. No. All these things I've mentioned, some of you do it freely. And it doesn't bother you. Drink, listen to worldly music, do whatever. It doesn't bother you. Nobody sees you. It's between you and God. And you take it that way. No problem. You don't fear God. I fear God. I remember that the Geo told us of a pastor that had taken one chorister, choir member, out of the state. They were going to sleep together. And they traveled. Let's say they left Lagos and went to Ibadan. And they went to a hotel somewhere. They looked around. Nobody knew them there. As they were entering inside the hotel room, looked left, looked right. Nobody knew them. Entered into the hotel room. And they were about to begin. And the girl said, "Sir, we have looked left. We have looked right. We have looked around. But there's one place we have not looked. Up." Of course, you know that is a mood killer. Nobody sleeps with a prostitute and says, "Oh, Father, as we're about to consummate this, our transaction, we welcome you, Holy Spirit. Just help us to be able to do it, to the glory of your name." He kills the mood. I mean, if you're a married man who's committing adultery, when you want to commit it next time, pray. Commit the act into God's hands. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Why do I fear God? I know him. I know him. If you know God, you will fear him. If you don't know God, that's why you don't fear him. You don't know him. But the more you know him, you will fear him. You will fear him because of his severity and because of his love. He is the same God of love, but he's the consuming fire. When you know him, you fear him. But you know, the benefits are many. Yes, we missed that US trip, but you know what God did? That very January or so, someone called my wife and said they have opened a window for Dropbox for those that their visas just expired. They've not done it for years. They have shut it down, but it's just been opened. If you start now, you can get it done. It took us a few days. We went to the embassy, dropped our passports. They gave us visas and renewed. Fast forward to the same, either April or May that year. One of my sons called me and said, "There's something that is happening in the US. I would like if you would be able to come." And I checked my schedule, and I believed God for a trip to London, not US. And I said, "Can my flight be routed through London and then to the US and on my way back that way?" And my son said, "That's not a problem at all, as long as you will come." I said, "I'll come." First class ticket. All the things that Satan thought he took from me, God restored all of it for free. The fear of God. He will not leave you stranded if you are somebody who has the fear of God. It's impossible. Except it's not the same God I serve that you are serving. He restored the holiday big time. More than enough. Fear of God. I don't know if I've not shared it with church, but many of you know. Last year, towards the end of last year, I got a call, my wife and I, and somebody said, "What do you think about this?" Sent a picture, and I looked at it. I said, "It's beautiful." I thought the person was going to ship this for their use. It was a car, a Lexus 460. And said, "Well, you like it?" I said, "Oh, yeah, it's beautiful." Said, "Okay, no problem." Before I knew it, fast forward several months, he said, "Are you home?" I was not home. We were in camp for, I think it was Congress then. And the person said, "Okay, who's home?" I said, "This person." They drove the car. It had arrived in Nigeria. It was for us. A family, not even in this church, blessed us with a Lexus 460. The day I took it to my Oga, my senior pastor, to bless for me. When I came to his house, he saw it. He said, "Pastor Emeka, do you know the cost of the car you are driving?" He said, "Let me show you." He went to a site where they do cars, and I don't check all those things. And he brought it and he said, "This car is at this point we are speaking and going up 42 million naira. Could I have bought it on my own? No. But the fear of God will bring you to places you never dreamt of before. All I did was, my wife and I agreed for that car. Zeno was telling me, Daddy, I saw that car when I came to your prayer room. It was on a board in my prayer room, stuck there. He came to meet me and said, Daddy, I saw that. I said, yes, we have been believing God for that very car. And God put it in someone's heart to sow it. The fear of God. Why will I not fear God? Listen to some of the blessings and I'll stop here. The Lord confides in those who fear him. Psalm 25 verse 14. This is why I wanted multimedia to be alert. The Lord confides. What does it mean to confide? He will tell you secrets. He will share his heart with you. Whatever secret there is, he will tell you before it happens. Stock market is collapsing. He's the one who will come and tell you and say, look, bring your money out. This is what's happening. He confides in those who fear him. Is that not a good reason to walk in the fear of the Lord? Somebody answer me. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 27. The fear of God. The fear of the Lord does what? Prolonged days. What does that mean? It gives you long life.